him. It probably is.
Yeah. All right, Pete. You ready to move on? We'll do
Sure.
1-1-1. Just kind of.
Let's do it.
All right. Who's your number 2?
Number 2, I think I mentioned it earlier. I gave a little spoiler. Steph Curry is my number 2. It's for me. He's arguably the player and I'll be honest about it. I've given him the least respect of any great player, I think, probably ever. And a lot of that just has to do with the team he's on. I'm not necessarily the biggest Steph Curry fan in general, but he's undeniable. Like, he is undeniably an all-time great. He's undeniably one of the most important players in the league currently if you want to win basketball games. If you want to win basketball games with a team of complete players and not just like a bunch of borderline G League players, like, because that's the difference, right? And I would use this, a different version of me, a less evolved version of me would use this as a criticism of Steph Curry, right? And I think it's pretty rational if you're only half looking, but 2 seasons ago, the season that, or was it 3 seasons ago, the season where the Warriors ended up picking Wiseman, I guess that was 3 seasons ago that they were that bad, is what I'm looking for. You would argue that a lot of that has to, like, why wouldn't we say the same things about him that we did about LeBron? And it's fair to a certain extent, but that team was very purposefully trying to be bad. They definitely were not trying to win a lot of games, and that sounds silly when you put Steph Curry out there, but he didn't end up playing, like, I think he played the least amount of games of his entire career that season. When you have Steph Curry and you have a team that does not consist of, 30% G League players, you're going to make it far into the playoffs because of what he does to the other team. Like, he is probably the ultimate unschemable offensive player just because of how much he opens up the court for everybody else he plays with. And that's why, like, the Warriors teams with him and KD were just absolutely unstoppable, is because you have Steph doing what he does, which is completely space the floor, like the ultimate floor spacer, right? And then you have the guy that is the best with that space, and that was KD at the time, right? So my biggest question is, would I have put him this high if they didn't win the championship? And obviously, I think the answer is no, but they did. So, you're winning currently. They're one of the favorites to win the championship again this season, and all of that is it orbits Steph Curry and what he's good at. So, top 2 for me.
All right, let's go to my number 2, which is actually kind of funny. My number 2 is actually Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Wow, we flippy-flopped on this one.
Yeah, we're gonna flip-flop on this one, and we'll kind of go back and forth with one another, because obviously I'll finish out my list. I got Curry 1. I'll finish out Pete's list as well. He's got Giannis at number 1. I'm assuming. Unless it's Sabonis or RJ Barrett.
Sabonis. No, I'm just kidding. It's Giannis.
Okay. So the reason why I'm going to flip-flop them more so for me is that I think, kind of continuing on your Steph Curry point, we have never seen a point guard like Steph Curry, the way that, again, offensively, the way that you're able to kind of use him, the way that the Warriors, again, you could talk about it being a system. We talked about this before. I know a lot of people like to bring up like the Tom Brady thing. Obviously people said that he was a systems quarterback. Here's the thing that you need to know about Steph Curry. He changes the game dramatically from the way that you have to be looking out for him almost 100% of the time. It's no longer a situation where, it's not going to be like Steph Curry is just a spot up shooter. He moves with a purpose. And that's the reason why, like, for me, when I see his movements, when I see the way that he screens for other guys so he can get himself open, the way that he doesn't necessarily stay in one place, the way that he uses his smarts and creativity to create those layups that he's able to make, those high arcing ones. Wiggins better, Sean? All right, we need to stop this nonsense. But again, talking about Curry, I think that this guy is generational talent. And he's not, and again, he's not the most athletic guy, right? We talk more so in terms of, his speed, his dunking ability. He doesn't have any of that. But what he does have is probably one of the best brains at decision making that I've ever seen in a point guard, ever. And that has to account for something when it comes to the game of basketball. Again, he has the mind he has the mindset and the IQ of a LeBron James, but with the shooting ability of like a young Ray Allen. You know, hitting those threes and everything like that. Reggie Miller and Peja Stojakovic combined. That's how good of a shooter Steph Curry is. And with his ability to shoot the ball, it gives him the ability to do a lot of different things as well. And so that's why I have Steph Curry at number 1. I think we can talk about Giannis together. I'll let you go first on Giannis.
Let me just wrap up Steph Curry real quick. 2 things for Steph. On my chemistry list, I actually had him tied at 1 with Giannis. I don't know. That makes my other list a little bit more complicated. I'm glad you decided anti-chemistry because it complicates things a little bit.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I think that goes so underrated about Steph Curry is just his selflessness. Like, there is nobody who has been as big of a superstar in terms of like what they can do, how good they are, but been as much of a glue guy as Steph Curry. Does that make sense? Like, he's both of those things. Usually a glue guy is like what's a good example of a glue guy from the last few seasons? Maybe like, dude, that's kind of tough. There's not a lot of good glue guys in the NBA nowadays. But that's JJ Barea, I guess, is a good example. Somebody who's not necessarily ever going to be a focal point of the team, not somebody you're really super concerned about, but it's just what he brings to the mentality of the team, what he does as far as, you know, impacting just the mentality of everybody on and off the court. I think Steph Curry might be unmatched in terms of bringing a positive mentality to a team, that camaraderie, winning spirit. Like, he is like the ultimate team player. And it's something that as I've gotten older, as I've kind of, you know, matured, and like I said a minute ago, evolved a little bit, it's something I've learned to really appreciate about Steph. Like, he really gets the most out of his teammates while also being just seemingly one of the best guys to play with in the NBA, which I think is something that needs a little bit more credit, you know, like in this era of player empowerment in terms of, you know, guys purposefully just, you know, gaining weight. Sorry, James Harden, not wanting to play for their team, Ben Simmons, not wanting to get the vax, Kyrie, all these things, right? We dunk on all these guys and we talk about people doing things wrong, but then you have Steph Curry who's just doing it right constantly, all the time, you know, and whatever that means to you, I would find it pretty hard to believe that you have like a problem with how he, you know, is a team player and his fit for a team. Number 1, let's go into Giannis, Bernie. Yep. For me, my number 1, your number 2. Giannis, to me, I think it's undeniable. Like I understand of all the players you could say is number 1 over Giannis, I really couldn't fault you for Steph, and that has to do with the fact that he just won his 4th championship in pretty convincing fashion. But the thing with Giannis is just it's just the LeBron syndrome from like 2005 to 2016, right? It's the same way I felt about LeBron then, in terms of there is nothing you can present this guy with that he cannot overcome. Like, he cannot be stopped offensively or defensively. There's no game plan. There's nothing you can do. You just have to deal with it and eliminate as many of the other players on the court around him as you possibly can.
Right.
And when it comes down to it too, for me, like, Giannis, and the thing that really made me start to love Giannis is just his commitment to making mistakes in terms of to make them in an effort to get better at the things he's weak at. And he does it all the time. He doesn't just do it in closed gyms when we can't watch. He does it in big games. He takes shots that, you know, sometimes you would criticize other players for, but then you see him actively start to learn from it and develop. Even in the middle of games, you've seen it from him. And that takes a super special type of player. And to me, if you're undeniably number 1 on defense and you're undeniably top 3 in offense, you're my guy. You're number 1 to me. Yeah. And he's both of those things. So yeah, Giannis is a hard number 1 for me. I almost would put him in his own tier personally, if we're not even counting Steph's championship. Or if we're not counting that, Giannis is like kind of a tier of his own for me.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I will say about Giannis, and the reason why I think he is probably one of the 2 top best players in the league currently, is because I think there's no game plan for him, just like you talked about with LeBron James all those years back. there's no real game plan. The only thing you can hope is to contain him and allow his teammates to make the mistakes rather than him. And again, we talked about it years before, even that championship year. He was kind of just a bulldozer at times, right? Where he would just drive in the lane. He could draw easy charge opportunities. And as long as you were there to kind of take those opportunities, he was not really that great of a passer out there. But he has improved his stats every year in the assist category. And I think that you can clearly see him getting a lot better in that instance of being able to know when and where to make those passes. And I think that as Giannis continues to develop, not only his IQ, as Gilbert Arenas would like to critique, he's going to improve his game. I mean, again, he's not going to be a knockdown shooter. I don't think he ever will be. Just with the fact that, kind of looking at his shooting mechanics, looking at kind of how stiff he can be when it comes to the shooting part, he will probably not be, again, not a Steph Curry, not even maybe a LeBron James even in terms of three-point shooting. But I think that he will be at least good enough to where that if you do leave him open, it's not going to be an issue. Or it's going to be an issue for the other team, I should say. And so I think, like, when I look at it and everything that comes, man, like, he's just unstoppable. You get him going with the head of steam. Guy only needs 2 steps to get to go, shoot a layup from half court. I mean, there's nothing more else that you can want from a guy like Giannis other than he has that charisma and has that energy too. And I think that's why a lot of people gravitate towards him as an athlete, because he does have those characteristics that you're looking for when you talk about chemistry, Pete. Especially when it comes to the team chemistry part of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing with Steph. It's exactly the same thing. I mean, there's not a guy you'd want in your locker room more than Giannis, not named Steph Curry.
Yeah, and again, it's not to take anything away from these other guys that we see here on this list. These other guys have their specialties, but I just think Giannis, again, even with his limitations that people like to put on him, he still has that innate ability to get guys to honestly play to the standard higher than what they normally do. And I've only seen that happen with 2 guys, and that's Steph Curry and that's LeBron James. LeBron James being the number one first and foremost. And again, we talk about guys like Bobby Portis, who got a huge contract under his wing. His brother got a contract under his wing. I think he's got 2 brothers now who plays for this team. And again, you can talk about that being the family connection, but again, a lot of people thought Drew Holiday was a nice piece. He was okay, but he leveled up when he went to play for Giannis. Even Chris Middleton leveled up as soon as he was with Giannis. And so I think that's what people forget sometimes when it comes to guys like LeBron James and Giannis, is that he levels guys up. Same thing with Steph Curry, levels guys up. That's what I think guys like Luka can do. That's what I think Jokic can do. That's what I think Tatum potentially could have the ability, depending on how this next season comes for him. Kevin Durant, I think, had it for a period of time, but I just think that some other outside stuff has been kind of the reason why I think a lot of people have been off of Kevin Durant. But kind of going back more so to the Giannis point, he does a lot of the things the right way. And as cringy and as corny as that sounds, those are what win you championships. Those are what puts you in contention for trying to become an NBA champion, are those instances right there.
Well, and 2, one thing for Giannis, another thing I don't think people talk about enough is, we hear about the ADs and Joel Embiids of the world, these guys that, are very often playing 40 or 50 games or even less in a lot of seasons. That's not Giannis. I mean, Giannis has played 591 games of 656 available, I believe. Like, he does not miss games very often. And, considering the fact that the guy is 7 feet tall, he's, oftentimes either the 4 or the 5 on the team he's playing with. That's almost unheard of. Like, there's not many players who are physically that dominant that they can hold up. And, just when it comes down to it, if you want I can't stress enough how similar I feel to Giannis right now at this point in his career as I did to LeBron in that stretch of the early 2010s. There is just nothing you can do to stop him, so much so that you can basically pencil his team in every season to be a 1 or 2 seed. They're going to be in the playoffs. And regardless of the players around him. The only question is how far can they go because of the players around him, right? And Giannis, I would argue, is right in contention with and some people would disagree with this, right? Because he does have Drew Holiday, he does have Chris Middleton, and I like Drew a lot. And Drew has gone up a few ranks for me in the last, couple seasons since he's been with the Bucks. Mm-hmm. But Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday were not even close to top 25 players before they played with Giannis. Like you said, they both leveled up significantly playing with Giannis, right? Mm-hmm. So if you were to ever be able to plug somebody that was just a legitimate top 25 with or without Giannis in next to him, if we're talking kind of like a Heatles type situation, like early D Wade and LeBron, people would feel very differently. People really would. It's just that Giannis has kind of had to build this name for himself from absolute zero, playing in YMCA gyms in Athens, Greece, right? And it's funny, like we started the stream off talking about Gilbert Arenas and, hating on Giannis, and now we have them both 2-1. And I think if you're a rational person who watches the sport, who cares about, like, not only winning, but all the things that people fault Kyrie, fault Kevin Durant, fault any of the players that get talked about all the time, you should hold the same energy in a positive light towards Giannis, because he does everything right to be one of those top guys. And I would argue, just as much as anybody else, has earned every accolade that he has gotten in his career. He has earned every step of it. And I think the truly, truly great players recognize it. I'm not saying I'm one of those. I'm garbage. I'm just saying he's earned every step of this journey he's been on. And dude, I love Giannis. I will defend Giannis from the mountaintops at this point. Like, we rode pretty hard in that playoffs that they ended up winning in 2020. Like, we had a lot of doubts. And, seeing him take these weird 3-point shots and, bricking free throws and taking more than 10 seconds to shoot a shot. Mm-hmm. None of it matters when you're a player like Giannis. None of it matters.
Yeah, I mean, again, at the end of the day, I think that this list, again, a lot of people will disagree. A lot of people will agree. I think that when it comes to it, I think people just need to realize that, again, it's just our opinions. No need to get frustrated or upset or cry that we've made our opinions about who we think are the top 15 best players. I hope no one cries. But I know I made Pete cry with the Jokic pick. But again, I think at the end of the day, let's kind of leave it to you guys out there that are watching this video after it's pre-recorded, or people that are just kind of watching in general. What do you guys think of our list? Do you agree? Do you disagree with our top 15 players? Again, for the most part, this would be the players that would probably win the award, minus, obviously the forward/center position. So it might knock a couple guys out. But let us know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about all this? Again, it's all opinion based. I think that there's not a lot of facts in this at times. I mean, I think we have some facts, but for the most part, it's our opinion. So I just want to make that clear, because again, you know how people get on the internet, they need to cry about a list where they disagree or agree with what you say. So that's the reason why I said that.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't be more wrong. And really, just one last thing too, piggybacking on that, is when you're in the top 15, top 10 of the NBA, you have to look really close with a fine tooth comb to separate these guys out. They're all the elite of the elite. You can have little gripes here and there, but like it comes down to personal preference, really. But also, you do have to weigh the success of these guys. Like their individual careers, how much they're still doing it, and it's an eye test for pretty much everybody. So, that's why I like your LeBron placement more than I do, more than I like mine. But I was going with my head and not my heart, and I think that you still won me over. I still like yours more than mine with LeBron.
Yeah, but let us know.
I got a question for you though, before we cap off our list. Is there any players you're surprised we didn't talk about in the top 15 or honorable mention list? Is there any guys that you think we're being the most disrespectful to or surprised by?
I think Chris Paul was probably on that list of players that we probably disrespected just a little bit because, again, whether we agree with it or not, he still carried the Phoenix Suns to a first place. As much, as much as we like to put the onus on Devin Booker, he also helped in that category and still being a great point guard at his age as well. I just think that we also need to mention him in that list of players. Another player. No, go ahead.
I really, really, really thought that Zach LaVine was going to be at the end of your list. I really thought he was.
Oh,
that was good. Who I meant earlier when you said you weren't going to put Paul George. I thought you were going to have LaVine over him. And I was thinking, like, I'm not so sure about that, but I think they're pretty close to each other.
Can I give you one more player that might surprise people for another honorable mention? I'm going to give it to Andrew Wiggins.
I thought you were going to say Furkan Korkmaz.
Korkmaz might get it next year. But I got to give it to Wiggins, man. I think that he really changed his narrative that a lot of people in the media, including myself as well, that, we talked about Andrew Wiggins in the past before, especially when he was in Minnesota. Even with Jimmy Butler there and that whole situation that happened there where he Jimmy Butler beat Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns with the scrubs, or I should say, the players the practice players. Mm-hmm. But he deserves a mention too, and it's kind of funny that we're kind of talking about it now, but he does deserve a mention because in that playoffs, he was unbelievable last year. Again, changing the narrative that was brought upon him. A lot of people said, the next Air Canada Jordan, right? Air Canada Jordan. Like, there was all these comparisons to Michael Jordan. A lot of people talking about it, but you cannot hate or, can't, what's the right word? You can't ignore the fact that he played a tremendous game and a tremendous season. And I think that he reestablished his narrative with winning the championship. And again, championships, whether, players agree with it or not, changes a lot of narratives, right? It puts you in this weird category of actually being a great player. Again, maybe not so much for like Adam Morrison as much, but for a guy like Andrew Wiggins, the first round pick, he deserves to be in that list because not only the way that he played against the Boston Celtics in that final series, but his whole playoff series that he had. I think that he was tremendous, and I think that he definitely changed his narrative going forward. And I think he obviously earned a big contract in the future, as we kind of continue to talk about, what teams will do. Maybe they'll move for him. Who knows?
Yeah, he was the second best player on a championship team. And as much as people don't ever want to accept that about guys like Wiggins, he really was the second best player on a championship team, and those guys usually end up being Hall of Famers. But he deserves to be where he is. I agree with you. I think we did a little bit of a disservice not talking about him. I still will be straight up honest with you. There's a lot of those honorable mention guys I would still take before him. He's one that I have questions of whether it's just like, is it the Curry effect? Is it being in the system that he's in? Is it really is that showing the perfect version of this guy? But you can't fault him for being in the situation he's in. You can't. So he is definitely an honorable mention. Somebody we needed to talk about because he did change my perception of him a lot too. I would never even consider him for the top 50 before last season. So you're not wrong whatsoever. The last guy that I want to talk about, just because I think it's interesting that neither of us mentioned him, and I think a lot of people would put him in their top 15, is Donovan Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell. I thought you were going to say Bam Adebayo.
I think a lot of people would put Donovan Mitchell in their top 15.
You think so?
I do. I really do. I think most people, the average fan would probably put him at like 15 or 14. I think so. And I don't think that's reasonable, personally. I mean, it's kind of why I've been slightly on the the Knicks trading for him bandwagon. But I think realistically the reason why I just unequivocally cannot put him in my top 15 or honorable mentions was just how bad defensively he was in the playoffs against Dallas. He was just a zero, maybe a 5 out of 100. It was just so bad. So yeah, I was just interested. I was very curious if you were going to put him in your top 15. I didn't think you would, but I think a lot of people would. So that's my question to the chat. Chat, is there anybody either now or in the comments afterwards, tell me what you think of Donovan Mitchell, where he would go if you would consider him for your top 15.
Yeah, definitely let us know. And also let us know if there's anybody that you see players on this page right here. Let us know if there's any players that we're missing off this honorable mention or even in our top 15. That's something that, again, adding to Pete's question, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think about that? Again, remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. And again, let us know what you think about our list and honorable mentions here on The Charge.